Hi, guys. I want to welcome you back to this series of Origin Story. We are in week 2 of this series. And last week we learned how that heroes embrace how God made them to be to help other people. That we looked at being superheroes in everyday life and how we can use our strengths and our creativity and the uniqueness of how God made us to go out and complete the mission of loving other people and helping other people. This week, we're going to continue with that series. And as we do, I want you to think about the question, what is a superhero's main job? What is it that they do? For some people, you might be thinking of Batman and saying that maybe Batman's job is to prevent Joker from doing his next idea to kind of destroy the city or to destroy the earth. Or maybe it might be the Avengers that you think of when you think of the superheroes. And for them, they got blamed a lot that they just destroyed cities and buildings got, crushed and demolished and with Hawk smash that even though he was, doing what he was supposed to be doing, there was a lot of destruction that happened. But I now want you to think about even if you're the Hawk, even if you are Thor, even if you are Spider-Man or Batman, I don't care what your superhero name is or what your superhero powers are, they all have one objective. And that is they want to help people. They want to save them from either the crime being committed or save them and free them from them being oppressed by, someone who's trying to take them over. And sometimes they're just trying to save them from the annihilation of their city or their culture. Well, I want to introduce you to an organization that is an everyday superhero. It's called Love Beyond Walls. This organization was started by this guy named Terrence and his wife. And in one particular case I want to tell you about is the one that they tagged #HireMark. This #HireMark campaign was all about helping this one guy named Mark. This guy, Mark, was a homeless guy that Terrence kind of found, and all he wanted was a job. He wanted to be able to go out and earn money so that way he can get himself a house. He wanted to go out and be able to provide for himself. But the problem with that is when you're homeless, a lot of people, by the way that you look, don't want to hire you. Or when you go to tell them your address and you don't have one, they're not really thinking that you're going to be responsible enough to be able to hold down a job. So you're kind of stuck in this cycle and in this situation. And as hard as you're trying to get out, you just can't seem to be going anywhere. So Terrence made it his goal that he was going to get Mark a job. And every day he would do something different to kind of help Mark. One day he would go and he would take Mark to go get a haircut to kind of get him all sharp looking. And so that way he would be presentable enough for someone to go say, hey, I can interview this guy. He might be okay in this job. And then another day he took him out to get suits and got him fitted so that way he would have something presentable to wear to the interview. So that way he can look the part of I can be trusted and I can hold down this job. Terrence even went as far as wearing a sign over top of him that says, hire Mark, and they stood out on the streets, out on the sidewalks. And as people would walk by, they would kind of hand out resumes. And he made it his goal that he was not going to stop until he had Mark a job. And there he was going to do something, whatever he could, to help Mark get back up on his feet. So that way he can start earning that money and start feeling proud of what he was doing. And as it ends up with the end of this story, Mark ended up getting a job. And he talks about how Love Beyond Walls and Terrence made such a huge difference in his life. It gave him a second chance. And Terrence didn't do anything flashy or anything that, would have been on the news all over the place. All he simply did was he saw a need of somebody's and he made it his goal to kind of help them try and meet that goal. He was going to do whatever he could to kind of go out and help them. When we hear stories like this, we are often moved and it kind of gives us that warm, fuzzy kind of feeling. There's just something so inspiring about seeing people do heroic things for each other. And Terrence didn't save the entire world, but he did make that dramatic difference in that one person's life. And if I had to guess and you go ask Mark, who would be your hero? I would not be a bit surprised if his words were Terrence. Because to him, I bet that's what he is. someone who came and kind of saved him and helped him. Well, in the Bible, of course, we have lots of people who kind of would do, help other people. But the one that comes to mind the most is Jesus. And Jesus showed heroic love, kindness, and care to specific people. And oftentimes it was people that it was the least person that you would think of. Like, why are you going to hang out with them? Why aren't you hanging out over here with the religious leaders and the teachers? And oftentimes it was with the sinners and the people who really needed him that he was hanging out with. And he would do that, and he's telling us to do the same thing. We're going to look at a story from the Bible that does that. In the book of John, chapter 13, verses 1 through 17, it says, "It was just before the Passover festival, and Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up for the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, 'Lord, are you going to wash my feet?' Jesus replied, 'You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand.' 'No,' said Peter, 'you shall never wash my feet.' Jesus answered, 'Unless I wash you, you will have no part with me.' 'Then, Lord,' Simon Peter replied, 'not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well.' And Jesus answered, 'Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you.' For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. 'Do you understand what I have done for you?' he asked them. 'You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them.'" I want you to think about that. Jesus just wasn't a friend serving his peers. He was the respected and honored rabbi, their teacher, their mentor, their leader. And to have him take on the role of a servant and wash their feet, for him should have been embarrassing and uncomfortable and wrong. I mean, look at the way that Peter reacted. He's like, "No, I should be washing your feet." I mean, and I want you to think about this. They didn't have shoes that were all closed up. Their feet would have been nasty. They were walking around in dirt all the time. I mean, they had sandals, so it's not like they're protected. I mean, I look at my kids' feet sometimes, and even when they're in shoes, and I'm like, "Dude, your feet smell." But Jesus went down and he took off their sandals and he began washing their feet. He, the teacher, the leader, was washing his followers' feet. See, but washing his disciples' feet was Jesus's way of caring for them. He was serving them, and he was teaching them something very important. That even before his greatest act of selfless love, even before he was going to go die on the cross, I mean, this was one of the last times he was going to be with those disciples. And instead of, having him celebrated and all about him, he made it all about them. He showed them how important it is to serve others and to take care of their needs. Jesus was modeling love on the smaller scale by washing the disciples' feet. And check what he said. He goes, "I am showing you an example. I want you to do what I am doing." In another book, in John chapter 13, it says this, "A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." I mean, how many times in those two verses is loved used? A lot. How important do you think it is that we should be out loving one another, that we should be helping them? When we see a need, kind of like Terrence, we help that person, that we do what we can to get them to whatever they need, whatever their need might be. He says, love one another. I loved you So now you must go out and love others. Jesus, our hero, taught love and care for others, and he modeled it too. He spoke these words knowing exactly what was about to happen to him. He knew he was going to be arrested. He knew he was going to be falsely accused, and he knew eventually he was going to be crucified on that cross. And he was going to do it all out of love for ordinary people like you and me. It wasn't for, the most richest and the most prominent ones, but for everybody. For Jesus, these weren't empty words. He showed his love and care for people through small acts of care, like washing their dirty feet. And he also did it through huge acts of sacrifice, like dying on the cross. We may never have to literally lay down our lives for others, but when we can be heroic, when we can love and care for others, we'll do it like Jesus did. God's decision to love me sacrificially reminds me that I should love others unconditionally too. Like Jesus didn't say that I'm only doing this for certain people. And oftentimes when we see a need though, we kind of have this block in front of us that, well, I'll go help them, but I don't know that I can go help them. And we kind of get in our head that there's certain people that we're comfortable okay helping. But there's other people that we kind of turn our head and we don't pay attention to. But that's not what God said. He gave his life for everyone. And he did it unconditionally. There was no strings attached. There was no groups that said, okay, for you, but not for you. He did it for everybody. So now you might be asking, well, how do I love others unconditionally? Well, I'm going to kind of give you a couple of tips. First, it's not about doing something for someone so that you get something in return. And this is what a lot of people do. They want to be noticed when they help somebody and say, look at me, look what I'm doing. And it's not about that. It's about doing something for that person and you're not expecting anything in return. And it's not to be flashy or to show off your powers or your strengths or your skills. And in fact, when you go to help them, you don't want it to be all about you. See, Jesus cared for the people in front of him. He had no agenda. He wanted no reward. And he wants us to do the same thing. He wants us to go out and help people without expecting something in return, without getting all, the hype and the credit and stuff for it. He just says, go out and care for them. So wherever you are, be aware of the people that you can see. Be aware of the needs that's surrounding you. Really look around. And knowing that many of those needs will be small and hard to spot, you might really have to take some time and say, how can I help them? I mean, Jesus once asked his disciples, don't you have eyes to see? Don't you have ears to hear? When we overlook the needs of the people who are right in front of us, I wonder if Jesus is asking us that same question too. When we see a need, but we're like, I don't know that I can help them. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do for them. He's saying, hey, don't you see that? Do you not hear that people are crying out for help? Do you not see the people right in front of you who need you to use your hero powers to help them? Not so that way you can get the credit for it, but because that way you can go and help them the way that Jesus would have. If you want to do a better job of caring for the people in front of you, there are 4 words that I want you to remember. The first is awareness. You need to be aware of the people in front of you and their needs. Start looking above, the phone or the device in your hands and actually be aware of what's going on. It could be something as simple as, this person just might need you to carry something for them. Or, it could be something as simple as they're struggling right now with money or with finding a job like Terrence did. Terrence he didn't really put anything into that except for his time. And being aware that sometimes the need is there for us to do little tiny things. Like listening. That's the second word. Actively listen to the things they are saying. Don't just nod your head and say, uh-huh. I mean, really listen to what their heart is saying. Really listen to what their needs are. And the third word is interpretation. Think about how your words can be interpreted. And not only by what we meant by the words we say. I really want you to think, especially now, like so many things are being kind of taken in and you say something, but other people kind of take it a different way. Really think about what you're saying. What is it that you're really meaning? And say it that way so that way they can't be misinterpreted. But on the same respect, I want you to think about how someone, like when you say something, can somebody take that and say, man, that's really not what that means? And the last word is sensitivity. Be sensitive to the experiences and perspectives that you fully don't understand. It is hard to know where anybody is coming from because you're not living in their life. But you want to be sensitive to what they have, what they are experiencing. Everybody's life experience is different, but that doesn't mean because it's different that you don't have to pay attention to it or help it. You may never fully understand it, but that doesn't mean that you can't help. And sometimes our hearts might be in the right spot, but our mouths aren't. So with this sensitivity, you really have to be careful of what you say because little things can really hurt others. Little things that you say that you might not think anything of can be really offensive to somebody else. So sometimes the most heroic things that we can do are the smallest but most meaningful things. We don't need to have superpowers to change the world, but we do need to be willing to care for others like Jesus cared for us. We need to be his hands and feet and going out and paying attention to the people who are in front of us. We need to be going out and doing what little things that we can to help be a hero to somebody else. Because heroes care for the people in front of them. So this week I'm challenging you. What needs can you find in front of you? Who can you go be a hero to?